So we're recording. Kathy and I just listened to a tape and want to talk about it. So I'm going to share this with friends over at Facebook and Twitter X. Didn't have much delay.
True.
Okay. If anybody shows up in the chat, so far, no. Well, somebody's watching besides me, I guess.
It ain't me.
So greetings to you. I know, I mean, skip that because that's kind of a negative thought. That's that's the point of this.
That's the first thing we.
Yeah, Krell's here. There you go. Hey, Krell. There's Silverty on the screen and Sam Odie on the screen. I gotta put the names on those pictures. Yeah. Yeah. So I named this uh, "Do discarnates really exist and love to have us fighting against ourselves and others?" Yes. It's over. Krill says he's happy to be here. Hope you're well. Yeah, we're doing okay. And we just walked around the house, the craft, our little craft. Right, but it's a house on wheels, but it's our craft on wheels. It actually does travel. Our craft does travel. But if you don't have one that travels, it's still your craft if you want to make it into your craft. And that implies, T and O's mind, wanting T and O's mind to be here. And their mind doesn't have negativity in it. Their minds also enjoy following instructions. and and it's like when we're in a place to where we're seeing how instructions are being broken and we want to say something about it, like in the world or to our partners, whatever the case may be. Uh, the big step to keeping it positive is to not make it personal and uh, not blaming the other person for not abiding by uh, better behavior and ways according to our whatever standards we have. And I would suggest T and those standards are listed in the major offenses and lesser offenses. Those are all like instructions on how to behave and with one another. And so if somebody is asking us for help, then it's how we do it, how we bring that help to that person, um, and the timing of it, and the words we choose, and not doing it in a way that you want to hurt the person, because even if they're doing something that is hurting somebody else or you, the attitude of a member of the next level is that they don't know any better because they've become overcome with influences of negativity. And, uh, and those same influences, when a human dies, if in their lives, in their thoughts, they were filled with negativity, then that same influence is going to want to be the same as they were when they were alive. And they're looking for a human vessel. It's not like they're thinking in their minds. I don't think I could be wrong about this, but I don't think in the minds of those minds that are now outside of a vehicle that they actually think about what they're going to do, how they're going to influence somebody. I think they just it's like a moth drawn to the flame kind of thing. They're drawn to the vehicles that are doing and thinking in the ways that they think, and they want us to do that because they get a buzz from it, type of mental buzz, and we know that that exists. So, so the thing is to learn to recognize them as quickly as possible, uh, and tell them to get away from us, get out of here, change our thoughts, stop our thinking midway. If we find ourselves, I've already stopped myself twice in this live stream from being negative. And uh, it's important that this isn't a Pollyanna seeking of, but probably a little bit of that can be helpful in terms of, being polite with people um, and not judgmental over others. And not having to be right, not thinking that you're right necessarily. Let's say you see somebody doing something and you feel like it's not a good. Let's say they're throwing a bunch of trash out the door. I'm not, and you know this person. I don't suggest doing this out in the public. We might get hit with a brick, but so if that person's not aware of it, then you would try to go up, try not to make them feel bad about it, and say, "Do you think we can uh, throw that out instead of just dropping it out the car window?" Because I wouldn't want to be living in a place where the streets were getting filled up with garbage. And so, I'm not suggesting that's not in this tape specific, but it was the best example I could come up with right off the fly. But I'm sure there's better examples or
That's
equivalent.
negative.
Right, that's negative. I'm not sure there's better examples.
I'm sure there are, or they're not. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. That's true.
Because your example was excellent.
It's wasting time.
That's negative. So much negativity.
I know.
Joe was saying at the beginning of the tape, or some part of it, close to it,
There's that
that
little gnat.
he wishes there was an alarm. Maybe the gnats are the alarms. We need to turn that negative into a positive. That's kind of Pollyannish. Anyway, to have an alarm every time negative thought
Hmm.
comes to us because we don't even know we're thinking it.
Yeah, we're often in the habit of it, and
Today was a struggle for me to get out of negative thought. I had to eat cookies and come home early from work and what else did I do? Oh, I did my little face mask. I ignored you for a little while because I'm going through the menopause stuff. You did your stuff and you ignored me, so I
well, I was busy, baby.
decompressed.
I wasn't like wanting
I
to
know.
ignore you, but I was working on the lawsuit
Saying
actually.
stuff
Talk about negativity, right? But I'm not looking at the lawsuit as negativity. Actually, I'm looking at it as an opportunity to try to serve the next level. If the next level would have us serve in that way, and I feel like they do. I,
did.
I feel like they do, and actually, I didn't tell Kathy this, but yesterday or the night before, I had a dream with Mark in it, and I was walking alongside him, and there was something else that happened before this, but I don't remember what it was. But I do remember after that walking alongside of him and and feeling like something was changing. Something changed in his negative attitude towards me and Kathy and Carlody and I don't know who else. Uh, but I know about us three because I was reading the complaint today because of what I was doing to prepare for this hearing that's coming up. And it was like every statement was accusing me of something, and Kathy and Carlody, that was not true. Almost every statement was not true.
But Mark thinks it's true.
Yeah, and so I would like to help him.
It seems like he thinks it's true. Just like he
Right,
texted me the
right.
last time he texted and saying you are doing something very wrong. It's like
Yeah,
what what are we doing that's so wrong?
yeah.
Listening to the tapes,
You asked that question, right, of
and he
him
never answered
in
me.
the chat, and he
He
didn't
never
answer.
answered me.
So this is, I'm bringing this up because I
It's
mean,
not wrong
the
for me to
person I
have
was
belief.
walking, the person in the dream that I was walking alongside of, that I identified as being Mark or Mercodi, actually, the class name that he was given by Tiendo. Uh, uh, I like Mercodi, and I believe he can. Um, I know this is like a judgment, but uh, you know, there's so much overwhelming uh, ways of thinking and that um, indicate, though I believe it was a good decision for him to and Sarah to uh, build up their case in order to try to win the tapes back from the government. I think that was from the next level to help to do that. Um, so that was the positive, but that the lower force influences stepped in to have them think that then they were therefore in control of everything, which is where if I could say that in the procedure book of the class, when you are acting like you're in control of everything, all the intellectual property, how it's disseminated, when it's disseminated, to whom that is disseminated, all things that Doe didn't spend any time, hardly, talking about, except for throughout the tapes, the way that people would act towards one another, and not just, I know their attitude is that part of it is that just putting it on the internet means that it's automatically in people's hands that are going to use it against Tiendo, and that's true. That's gonna happen, and the same way that when Doe put the Beyond Human tapes out on the satellite dish station that it was on while I was in the classroom, uh, there was a certain amount of negativity that comes from that, and you can't avoid it because the earth is saturated with negativity to where, like Kathy was just saying, we don't even know when we're being negative, and that we're even being negative uh, in order to have an interface with others that are overwhelmed with negativity. That's what I'm doing now by talking about this like this, because I'm like taking the position that I'm right and they're wrong, which I don't know if that's the case really. To be honest with you, I don't know that they're not doing the best they can, and that Doe is using the things that they want to do as the next level does. The next level wants us to do the things we want to do, but they also want us to ask them whether this is what they would have us do. And that's the way that the next level then gives people help. And then it's up to the individual again to decide when they hear something that they get a little suspicion might be that help, not to just discount it right away, or not to, translate it into something else, or be defensive right away, and just, maintain the defense of it in their minds instead of actually wondering maybe they were right about that. And maybe we can come to a higher conclusion without using the government. Or maybe the next level is looking at the circumstance and thinking, well, this might be a way to keep all this information in the public record because we've been like, sending all kinds of examples of T and Doe's teachings into the public records of this lawsuit. Right, as before it wasn't anywhere because there weren't any lawsuits before, and Mark and Sarah were doing that in the first lawsuit that they filed against San Diego County, and they also did it with the second lawsuit that was filed against trying to get Ricardi's estate. You know, At the time when Mark was battling with Riccoti, both Mark and Riccoti got in touch with me and were uh, asking for help. I just wasn't in a state of mind that knew how to help them. Well, because I was talking about the complaints against us, all the things that I was reading, and I was thinking, boy, these things are so negative and they're not even true, most of them. Some of them are just facts. There's 118. Mhm. Right, right. I
All
don't.
that.
Right, I don't want to. No, yes, I agree. So I'm going to move into that direction. So, so the tape is tape. Let me get the number. No one else in the chat. And now there's four individuals watching. So, let me get my document on my screen. So, so this tape is on my screen there. It says that this is Sawyer's rough notes from listening to audio 280A, which was recorded on December 6th, 1987, and December 9th, 1987, 3 days later. And the first part in the sixth was continuing from the tape before this, tape 279, which we talked about in the previous live stream, I think. Oh no, maybe a couple ago because we segued into the 470s, 475 and 476 for a couple streams. But anyway, so it was a little bit ago. But and I'm just going to tell you what the keywords were of the 12.6 part of the tape, which is to prove we can be 100%, and that it may be right for some to choose to take separate quarters from the classroom. And that Lucifer believes he is right and that his methods are good. And then he talks about the Mormons. And frankly, he talks about how off track they are from what Jesus was teaching, mostly related to their having a family structure, that they think is blessed by God. Because the only ones that can be blessed by God are individuals, not families. You can't bond to your human family and expect to continue that bond in heaven. That's where other Christians get off track as well, because it's the soul that graduates into next level membership or is saved for future opportunities for next level membership, not the vehicle's mind, uh, uh, except for what became part of the soul pocket or pillowcase or container, plasma-like container. So anyway, uh, so there were some that were in the classroom talked about after that did take separate quarters, and sometimes it was like a year or two ago after this happened that took place. Um, but anyway, I'm going to move on from that part of it, the tape, and get to the 12/9/87 tape, the 9th of December, which the keywords are exorcising negative thoughts. And that's exorcism of those negative thoughts. And that the influence that says I'm a second class citizen is an example of a negative thought to exercise. Now, I can hear all the influences, that would say, but that's the way we're treated. That's. And I'm not saying that it's not so, because there's also, talked about in this tape, an influence that sees others as second class citizens, like between Northcraft and Southcraft in this example. And that's uh, um, just as bad, or even maybe a little worse attitude to be thinking about somebody that way. And I know that there were members of the class that thought of their classmates as lesser as well than they. Um, and I think a number of those probably ended up leaving if they didn't get rid of that influence. But it is an influence because humans cannot judge other humans. We can judge their behaviors and ways, whether those behaviors and ways are behaviors and ways that we want to have, and whether we want to be around them or not, or whether we want to pay them for something, or contribute to what they do, and all those kind of related kind of interfaces that we have with humans is our choices, are our choices to make. And but um, I mean, I'm not saying there's not a value, because though I was talking, I'm trying to apply this to now, so that's not just about history of the classroom, because I don't think it is. It's not meant to be history for the classroom. Well, these tapes wouldn't be available to us. It's a gift. These tapes are a gift to us. We are lucky to have them, extremely lucky. And you'll hear Do talking about the luck, being lucky to be in the classroom, and that it's a genuine uh, um, um, joyous gift. It's the most beautiful thing on the planet, and it's it's very special to be have been in the classroom, and um, so to keep that on our minds, because if we're not in the classroom, that classroom, we still can be in the classroom, but it's a different classroom. It's not the same one because that group of students left with that criteria and everything that they left with, according to the standards of T and Do to graduate. That classroom is over. And those who remain are in a new classroom, and there's things that we can do, think, say, and do that are going to be uh, from T and Do's mind if we ask T and Do to have their mind on uh, next steps in service, and whatever that entails, and then keeping your mind open to where those next steps in service are coming. And a lot of times it's going to be to learn lessons that are not necessarily easy to learn, but can be actually easy to learn when we ask T and Do for help on how to learn it. And then we take it a step at a time uh, to learn the lesson. And it's all a matter of choices every day. Anyway, so I'm going to move on from that. But I can't help but know that there is a classroom now. It's just spread out, and each person can have their own little craft. They can make their own little environment and make it pleasant. And if they need to run around and sing songs in order to get rid of the negativity, that's part of the classroom. Doe talks about it in this tape. Have music. The way he was talking, it was like this. There could be a number of things like that help us, you know, um, get rid of negativity. that would tell us that we're no good or that we're whatever the thoughts are about us, it's not coming from our next level minds, from the next level's minds. Then there's members of the next level on their spacecrafts through their computer systems
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day, able to hear our thoughts if we uh, have been asking for them um, to be in our lives in different ways, shapes, or forms. And people can be asking and not even know about Tiendo. If they're separating from the world in their own ways, they're not gonna. They're gonna move away from the adversity of the people that want to fight for this and fight for that because they don't want disharmony. They want to have the greater harmony that comes when we're actually uh, uh, identifying more and more of the mind and the positivity of the mind of the creators of this planet and the life forms on it, which were here incarnate in the flesh in the names T and O and their crew. Their crew members that graduated had achieved purity enough to where they were no doubt awarded physical next level grown vehicles and jobs, positions, opportunities to grow further on spacecraft and uh, laboratories that can be as big as a planet, and that humans have no knowledge of what's going on inside of it or outside of it. Uh, so, so the, I mean, the reason why all this negativity is here is because the next level uh, knew that it could be used to grow strong, grow minds that are strong by getting rid of it and keeping it out. And so, being alert to the things that we say that are negative is a way of keeping it out. So that if we hear ourselves saying something that's negative, then stop it before it even finishes the sentence in our mind, and certainly before it comes out of our mouths. So a clue to that is, let's say we feel like saying something negative to somebody. If we have that feeling, then maybe it's best to take 24 hours and think about it. Think about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it.
And maybe you won't say
And
nothing.
maybe you won't say nothing. Right? That's right. Because it may be worthless, like Doe was talking about in his tape, 280. That so many of the things that we think we make mountains out of molehills. That's almost the rule now. Like if you listen to the media, you know, uh, there's so many things that uh, are being said that are just fragments of what's true. What really happened. And that are there's all kinds of ways of looking at things. It's difficult. It's meant to be difficult because. Um, But we can, I think, grow to be objective to where we're not getting too emotionally affected by things, even though I think the discardant influences would like us to get disturbed by things so they can get that buzz on. Uh, and they'll give us the argument that, well, if I'm not disturbed about this, then uh, I'm not feeling it. is there something wrong with me that I'm not disturbed with it? Which, I mean, being disturbed initially, I don't think there's anything wrong with that because there's a lot of things that happen in the world that are very disturbing.
Very
People
disturbing.
dying and stuff, for all these wars and conflict over geography and way of thinking and religious beliefs and stuff. It shows how corrupt everything became very quickly after Jesus left. It became increasingly corrupt because the next level allowed that to happen, knowing that when they returned, uh, the ones that were growing through that 2,000 years ago uh, and had grown a little bit from that experience in the vehicle 2,000 years ago and a little bit thereafter, however long, that happened. It could have gone on for a long time for some people. Some people were growing the whole time. You know, we can guess about some of them, who they are, but, uh, um, well, I think St. Francis of Assisi is an example of one individual um, that was evidencing coming from the strain and having a soul returning to do a task. And that might have been, a soul that was a student level soul, um, or maybe even someone that was becoming closer to doing a task like T and Do were doing, which there were in the classroom. Some individuals in the classroom were ahead of others. That wasn't a negative, but that's another influence that can come in and say that if I'm not as close as they are, if I'm in the classroom and I'm seeing them interacting and getting more tasks, I can think I'm not as close as they are to T and O. Then I can let that be a negative, or I can conquer that influence as well and know that uh, I've already got exactly what I need in the classroom, and that if I do the tasks that I already have of keeping out the negativity, then the next level will see to it that more uh, tasks that relate with them more and more are given to me, given to us, and individual will. I'm talking to people now, but this applies in the classroom directly. And I experienced this in the classroom because I was jealous, as I've talked about a number of times, of those that were in what was called Satellite 3,
I
which
would be
was
so jealous too.
right. That was like the comm center, which comm center stood for communication center. That's where uh, uh, people were writing notes and sending it if they need a medication of some sort because they had these symptoms. Then they would write in a certain way. They would write it to where they weren't actually asking for the solution, but telling the symptoms of whatever the problem was. And these individuals in comm center were assigned to use those notes because it would have had medical on the outside of it that the person would have wrote. And then they had procedures on, okay, if for these symptoms in this circumstance, for this, how many times, the person might have had them before and, all that. They were keeping track of all that. And we can issue them to aspirin or something like that, because it had already been run by T&O and T&O gave instructions on how to handle different things. And they weren't necessarily specific to individuals, but specific to symptoms and how bad the symptoms were. So they didn't have to go to T&O at that moment to get approval to give that. But then they would put it in a report that would go to T&O so they could check on us to see if we were handling things in the way that they would. And when they would get that report, in their minds, they'd be asking their older members for help to identify whether that was the right thing to do for that student in that circumstance. And they might get an update, or they might feel like, well, you know what? This has been happening repeatedly, so what else can we do to help the student with headaches? And they might think, okay, maybe it's a thing from a diet. Maybe it's a conflict, like what do you call it, a allergic reaction. Because there's allergic reactions that happen that make headaches happen. I'm just using that as examples. But and and influences actually can stimulate things like that in us and all kinds of problems. That um, we can get rid of. And Kathy was playing a tape number three, audio tape number three, the night before, well, last night I think it was, or
This morning.
yeah, it was this morning, or was it when we went to sleep early last night?
Was that what it was?
I think so.
I've been listening to so many when I've been
Yeah,
reading.
you were listening to something else. Maybe it was the same one. But in that tape, Doe and T were sitting together, giving and leading the class through a couple meditations and talking about them. So that's a really good tape to think about and listen to and get in our heads to use against any form of negativity, whether it's aches and pains or whether it's and but you can see why they were teaching that also in that tape, which I'm not going to go through right now because I want to get back to this one. I'll go to the chat. Although I don't know if there's anything going on in the chat, which is fine. No, there's nothing new in the chat.
Do you have top chat on?
Oh, I don't. I have top chat on. Live chat doesn't show anything else. I forgot to do that, but thanks. Yeah. And so um, if you're just joining me and you want to ask questions, that's the best way I can know what you don't know, and maybe help you see more of what you might not know about this subject or anything else related to Tiendo. But otherwise, I'm going to continue to go on with uh, the way that we're self exercising negative thoughts. We didn't have any procedure for exercising somebody else's negative thoughts unless the person asked us to help in that regard. And that was the assigned job of every student to be a partner to another student. Sometimes we had threesomes, that were three individuals working together. Not the way that threesome is used nowadays, but because they didn't have any sexuality in the group. Anyway, but see, that was a negative thought to
Yeah,
explain that.
so maybe don't use that term anymore
Yeah,
to describe
I
it.
just didn't get to it
So
soon
you
enough
don't even have
in my
to
mind.
go through all that.
Right, right.
Anyway, move on.
Yeah, and then you would have partnerships in crews, like six individuals working on making what we humans think of as our meals, but they'd be making a meal for everybody. And there might be 30 or 40 individuals in the craft or less than that, depending on who was there at the time and what meal it was. But anyway, so when you're working together, so the classroom was doing all the things that humans do. I mean, not all the things that humans do, but doing all the life support things that humans do. Of preparing food and washing and cleaning up and taking care of the grounds of the house and everything that paying for everything by going to a out of craft task. A job in the world was thought of as an out of craft task because you were outside the craft. That we were thinking of our house as a craft, not that it was decorated that way, because it was decorated so that if somebody came into it, they wouldn't know that there was something going on here. Except these days, you could have pictures of space and stuff, and nobody would care, probably. But in those days, in that circumstance, they didn't want. We had some good paintings and things that were interesting, but it wasn't. I have to say that all. I don't know. Maybe I don't have to say that. I always say it when we talk about craft because I picture people thinking that we were had pictures of Spock or something everywhere, or we didn't have any of that. It wasn't, uh, it wasn't trying to, because we don't know what a next level spacecraft actually looks like inside. We don't have that in our minds. And T and Do, if they had that in their minds, they didn't have much to say about it. Um, they didn't feel like that was pertinent to becoming a member of the next level and being able to work in that environment because we'd learned that when we got to the next level. We got into that spacecraft. It's like, you don't need to, I shouldn't go there. So I'm going to cut that one off. But that wasn't a negative. It was just a sidetrack. That wasn't necessary, I think.
Mm.
But anyway, so, because I could try to give too many. I mean, it, it's not like it's negative to acknowledge when um, when you're discovering there's better ways of saying things or more positive ways of saying things. And I don't know. It's because I do want to get to the place of the fact that it wasn't wrong for individuals, and I started on this score, but I got off on it. That in the classroom, if people were asking for that help, as I said, everybody was wanting to do if they want to be part of that classroom. Otherwise, they would leave the classroom. Um, uh, then then when somebody would bring something to their attention that they might not be doing according to procedures were very, very important. Though even said it with two verys in this tape. So, uh, but some of the things, that's why we had a procedure at one point that somebody had to break the procedure 3 times. Not too many tapes ago, he talked about this. Uh, Before you would bring it to their attention. Now, if it was an emergency, then you wouldn't wait. If they were about to, burn the house down, yes, you don't want them to, you know, burn the house down. So you wouldn't wait to bring that up to them that what they're doing could burn the house down. That's just an extreme example. I don't think that ever happened in the classroom, but uh, we have to know that. I mean, I want people to know that T and O were not into extremes, except some humans would say that they went to extremes, of course. But um, but they weren't extremes to the next level uh, because the next level has a very. That's why Jesus said it's a narrow path, and that the road to destruction, in other words, being recycled, spirit, soul, body being recycled, uh, is broad. It's easy to be on, and but everybody has the opportunity to be growing in their own way. So everybody can potentially be saved for a future opportunity to grow. But if somebody doesn't grow to have that opportunity, then they're well, it's just not our job to decide who that is because it's not by who dies in like a hurricane or an earthquake or a volcano or a war. They're not uh, because I mean you could say that if you're in a war zone, you're separating from your humanness in a big way just to survive because you're going to care more about others than yourself. I think. I mean, you're going to want for yourself as well, but you need to work together better when you're in that kind of a circumstance where you don't know where your next drink is going to come from, where your next sandwich, or bowl of rice, which human vehicles. This isn't a justification of people treating people badly like that, like putting them in circumstances to where you know uh, they're scrambling for a bowl of rice every day or every third day or whatever it is. But but there are lessons to be learned from that, and the next level knows if you're um, learning it. So they're the ones that choose. They created everything here. All the systems they created them. They designed them, and they're designed in ways that we don't really understand necessarily. And it is by experience that things change and things are changed to do things differently. And they've been doing this for beyond our sense of time. And they love their jobs because their jobs are always changing. And they're seeing individuals growing, and they get a lot of joy from that. And they're seeing one another growing as well. And if they listen to thoughts that say, that person's growing better than I am, then like the example I was giving about the jealousy with the individuals in Com Center, uh, uh, I did. I'm happy to say that I did feel like I overcame that, even though it didn't mean that it was never knocking on my door again. But I did overcome that, and I decided, well, I've got tasks I can do when I'm caught up with my assigned tasks. I have free time. I mean, I could sit down to read because we always had books that were interesting to read, and I could always um, vacuum if it needed it, because that was not an assigned task. I could always sit at the computer and transcribe audio tapes. I could listen to an audio tape again, and that would all be really positive things to do from my lessons. And because these tapes are so full of opportunities to grow by listening to over and over again, that Tiendo even felt that when humans were listening to these tapes after they left, they could even grow by osmosis of listening to them over and over because repetition is a big teacher. We're teaching our vehicles. We're taking control of our vehicles by repetition as well. Getting rid of the negative influences is something that is going to continue to be something to need to do as long as we're in the human kingdom because the human kingdom is saturated with it. But that doesn't mean that we don't grow to be able to get rid of influences faster with less effort to where they don't even disturb us. And it's like, but doesn't mean that when the mosquito comes around to bite you, that you don't try to swat it quickly if you see it. But if it happens to bite you and you realize you got a sting, well then try to be keener so that you sense it coming before it comes, or you feel it on your body before it actually bites you. Um, I'm just, that example is the same with the discarnates. They can, give you a very subtle negative thought or feeling about something. And it doesn't mean that every feeling and thought that you have isn't worth looking at sometimes. It can be. I mean, it can seem like it can be a negative because of, let's say you walk down a dark street and you walk in the alleyway or something, Uh, you may not want to walk down that dark street in that alleyway at that time. Um, and to think, though, well, that's a negative thought, that something might happen to me if I go down there. Now, that might be a positive thought to keep you away from going down there. But, so there is a learning to recognize what, um, and if in doubt, don't. That's one of the rules that we have. And so, like, if your feeling is not to go down that dark alley, then don't do it. Find someplace else to go if you need to, you know, use the restroom or something like people do sometimes uh, down the alleyways. I'm not, proposing that. I'm just saying that that's sometimes a reason why somebody might do that, as we've seen in cities and things. But let me go back to the words that, let me go back to the chat. See if there's anything. Oh, I see Rise Above is in here. It says, hey, Kathy, Krell, and chat. Good to see you as well. That's Krell.
Hello.
And anybody else that's listening. Um, well, it was a little bit. I want to just segue a little bit to the prophecy game. That's what Doe called it, so I like calling it that now. Not that it can't have its value. A game can have a lot of value, but it's not necessarily, it's not something to treat overly seriously. I think maybe would be the way to think about it. One way to think about it. So uh, I'm not going to go into what that might be for somebody, but uh, I started reading this in the last stream, um, and so I'm going to take off from the place on Revelations 6:14. I'm not going to describe all this. I did that in the last stream, and it takes a while to do a decent job with that. So I don't feel to do that. Ask me questions if you want to know more about it. But it says that the heaven departed as a scroll, and when it's rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And I was relating the first part of that as a thought that I had with Atlas, that maybe it's coming here to remove the database that is the heaven, the local heaven, the part that they want to save for a future opportunity. And that might be something that I'm not saying Atlas is going to do that. I'm saying that that might be it might be associated with that process. That we might, there might be another one that comes. You know, it depends on what the next level is doing, but For whatever it's worth, by listening to Stephen, what's his name?
Burns.
Burns on a YouTube channel, which is very informative. Uh, he's documenting something that I've been feeling for a lot of years.
I saved a lot of the videos too.
Oh, you did? Oh, that's good.
There's a lot more of us.
That's good. I want to actually move that to my Facebook page too. That last one especially, because he's talking about the correlations that he is seeing. Uh, you know, between um, the interstellar objects like Oyumama and Oyumama, Mau or Mau Mau, and Borislav, not so much, but in some ways can be related because it was considered to be an interstellar object. And in the current one, 3I Atlas, the third one. And so he's talking about the correlation of how the sun seems to be already responding to it as it gets closer and closer to, and it's flying along the ecliptic as opposed to the way the other two like came in and out like almost like at a right angle from the ecliptic. And he's saying it's showing up with certain characteristics in the sun that uh, has his science to to think about as happening, and then also with it's correlating with uh, the increased or the larger, let me put it that way, earthquakes that have happened recently in the sevens, uh, uh, and uh, and how, from my knowledge of studying the earthquake phenomena, there weren't a lot of sevens, maybe never actually. Mostly you would see sixes as the highest one that was happening. Occasionally there was a seven, but recently, in the last year, maybe I don't know, maybe more than that. Um, there's been sevens in places where there used to be sixes only at the highest, and this is the same areas. Like Chile is getting them a number of times. Haiti got them a few times. Iran got them a few times. Uh, uh, I don't remember seeing any up in Russia, and I haven't
They
seen
have
any.
volcanoes though.
Yeah, but he's got the volcano recently, but that's a new volcano up there. The volcanoes were happening in Indonesia, they were happening in Sumatra with the tsunamis, and the one also of the earthquakes that happened that some people thought might have been related to an object that went into the sea that caused the one that caused the tsunami in Japan that wiped out that nuclear reactor. And I began to wonder whether the next level wanted to uh, get them to make a better reactor. And so it was using that to, as additional things that they were doing, in that area. And because the next level are the gardeners. They do all kinds of things on this planet. And, and to think that humans are causing all these things to happen is a distraction. It's not true. Humans aren't causing that much. I mean, sure, they're polluting the air and the water and the thought environment is being polluted uh, big time. So they're definitely having an effect on things. And sure, the cities can be overcome with smog, if the winds don't blow it out. But anyway, sure, it's good to come up with a better engine so that we don't put out so much. Anybody knows that if they followed somebody that had bad rings on their engine and they're putting out big puffs of black smoke. Nobody wants that to breathe that. And so, yeah, those are the things that we can do to improve things. And even with the nuclear waste, how to get rid of it and stuff, um, and not make bombs out of it, because that's not from the next level's mind. Uh, the space aliens, they have interest in using nuclear energy in that way, uh, because they're trying to perfect like an engine that has anti-gravity and has the ability to travel at enormous speeds. And the material and make the materials to make those spacecraft so that there could be living humans or human equivalents in the hybrid space alien souls, um, that vehicles that those souls are trying to continue to grow, that are on board those spacecrafts. And the humans are demonstrating that same thing. They want to build spacecrafts that can go to Mars and the moon, and they can harvest elements, and they can have domination over the earth with their military in order to keep humans that aren't abiding by what they want them to abide by in check, so they can continue to make money and build all their technologies to save the world. That's what Rael was talking about. That it was through technology they were going to save the world. Cloning technology is another one. Don't forget that we get the next level gives us clues on things that are happening in this world. That's why we come to learn about them. And like when we found out that one of the individuals that was abused uh, by Epstein was taken to New Mexico, and that she reported there and other places that there was uh, well
Because he had a
people
ranch
in
there.
he had a ranch there, and he was bringing everybody there. Oh, all the girls were being brought there,
Yes.
and that she had the sense at one point that they were taking eggs from her, and and you know,
People can go search.
yeah, you can search those individuals, the Blair something, which I'm not proposing that that person Blair White is, it says everything right, but she was interviewing this person that was in that ranch, and I don't take that lightly when I hear stuff about genetic engineering and trying to develop babies, because that's been part of the abduction phenomena for
We got that
generations.
Trump's
6'9", I think. Yeah, they said that Trump's son was 6'9". So yeah, Trump said that, and we heard him say that today, because he says he's not a very good soccer player, but he's a good athlete, I guess. And so that means he's probably got good coordination. So when I heard that, I thought, wow, I wonder who's playing with those genes. You know, I don't know, but I'm not saying that he's a bad person at all. Nothing like that. In fact, that could be a next level experiment. But or they could take advantage of it, even if it did happen through human breeding programs and or using even space aliens. I heard the individual Stephen Greer say in a short today that he felt like the space aliens didn't reproduce in the ways that humans do. And I don't doubt that they don't. But I don't, but the thing is, no, I'm going to take that back. I think they do. I'm going to go to the reverse. I think they do. But those souls are using hybrid vehicles to do that with. And you see all kinds of reports of people that were abducted that talk about how they had some tube put down there, their vehicles, their vehicles body to extract sperm. And well, it's part of the biology we're talking about. Breeding. They're doing that. We have them doing those things. Yeah, right. I get it. I get it. So that's all I need to say about it. If I need to say that at all, I can just say that they do genetic reproductive experiments on people, because it's important if somebody doesn't know about that to, I think, learn about it. Well, maybe it's not that important. Yeah, go research it yourself, and but I'm telling you that from my research and from my experience, this when I heard this about this was potentially going on, and the other things about that story that were told didn't seem to be made up to me. There were too many little things in it that made sense, could have been happening to try to even drug this person, in order to which happened to people that were abducted as well. Look into Bud Hopkins abduction stories, and Betty and Barney Hill's story of abduction, and look into Travis Walton and Whitley Strieber, and um, I could keep on going, but uh, uh, there's another Mark. Let's see, what was his name, from the Chicago area? I think he was big. He came after Bud Hopkins, but no, it was someone that was doing the reverse hypnosis on people. Yeah, the Travis Walton abduction experience as well. Yes, you can see all kinds of evidence of this. And anyway, so nothing new in the chat. So I wanted to get to something in the prophecy game. But what's up? The one that's more full is the one from your bowl. Yeah, yeah. The other one I'm going to take with me tomorrow when I go to work for my breakfast. Yeah, yeah. Maybe I can empty something in there to a smaller container or something. Yeah, we just have a little refrigerator, but it helps us manage things. Yeah, keep things fresh. Right. Yeah. So it says that the kings of the earth in Revelation 6:15, and the great men and rich men, captains, and this isn't men, it's people, it's talking about in all these circumstances. And I can go through. I went through that in the last stream that I did, where I talked about the details of that. But they hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, going underground. But the other part I forgot, I was going to go back to, was this little thing that it said in Revelation 6:14. It said, "And every mountain and island were moved out of their places." And just I was listening to Stephen Burns today, and he used those same words, saying that the earth, the earth shook from these earthquakes, and they feel them all around the earth. That's what the seismographs are showing. And Jesus said that you would see earthquakes in diverse places, and I know they've been going on for a long time. Right, and Stephen Burns is relating it to the solar flares coming out of the sun and the holes in the sun, the coronal holes they call them, and you can see them. They're big holes where you think sometimes in the pictures that I've seen of them, it looks like there's stars in there, as if it's like right through the sun. I don't know, or maybe it's inside the sun that it's got all kinds of, like, it's got its own little system that's generating that plasma heat. Yeah, but I'm going past the research with my ideas about things. Oh, right, right. Yeah, scientists have some explanations on why the sun has these holes and stuff, but I don't know. I haven't heard much about why. Um, I don't doubt it, but I also know that uh, there's a lot of things about Atlas that are are really the shots in the dark. Right. No, but they've been studying comets as well. Yeah. All right. All right. So let's. So um, so that, I'm not saying that every mountain is going to move to a degree that we're all going to feel it or something, but maybe it will. But we're all talking about when we play the prophecy game. We're not talking about a specific day of the week, specific month of the year, specific year even. We're, we're, we're talking about time periods when this can be happening, like even since, if you actually study uh, this other field of study of earthquakes, for instance, you'll see that that San Francisco earthquake happened like I think 1908, something like that. And at the same around the same time as that, within a year or so, there was the Tunguska crashing of a fireball or a meteor or a comet, or whatever it was, however you want to define it, because these definitions aren't all set in stone for the next level. They talk about how comets are made out of ice and dust all the time. Ice and dust, ice and dust, ice and dust. And when you find out that, you know, they've been thinking about it, like Kathy was saying, I don't know if you could hear her from the restroom, but they've been thinking about it for a long time, and uh, they know to get a certain velocity and to be able to put out a certain amount of particles, that there has to be a certain amount of mass, and it's it's hard not to think about things in different ways, especially when almost every comet that comes is a little different. Just like almost every hurricane that comes is seems to be a little different. Just like every tornado or natural events all seem to have a different signature. They can all be similar in what they do and where they go, but precisely there's always exceptions, like hurricanes that take a right hand turn. I saw that happen a number of times, or just stall on the coast when they weren't doing that before that they were aware of, like Hurricane Harvey on the Texas coast. And the one that did the right hook into the coast of Atlantic City or area in New Jersey, which I saw the storm that was affecting New Jersey now in Wildwood, and I was on that. I went to the amusement park in Wildwood. I took my daughter there with my friends, uh, Eric and his daughter, some years ago. And I don't think it was, I don't know how bad it's getting there, but it was coming over the boardwalk. Not completely, but uh, that's coming up pretty far. Uh, so my points are that we are going to see it more. It is going to make more sense to us that it's happening. And there's going to be just as many people, or maybe even more, that are going to be saying that it's not happening. that all that prophecy stuff is a bunch of baloney, and they can prove it, and they got all their reasons why it didn't happen, and I could go through all of them. I've heard it many times, and that doesn't mean that I believe everything that's said in the Revelation prophecies. I don't, because I learned from experience that Doe was correct, that John didn't get everything right that he was given, and that and I learned that interpretation of words into English words is I guess it's like a type of art form. It's a study in itself that you gotta learn the context of the use of words, and you can be influenced to just give a couple keywords when actually if you spelled it out a little more, you would be depicting a more accurate picture. Now, it could even be so that the next level knew that John got some things wrong, but that it could be used because the next level knows that people in different degrees of growth uh, can receive the truth a little differently, a little bit slower, in order for their brains to catch up with, not to hear so many thoughts that make them confused about certain ways of thinking. Like I remember when there was some Christians that would, and I'm not against Christians, but I am against staying in a limited mindset. But so I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I was on the street, and I would frequently play music on the street and stuff while I was there. But so while I was there, it's like um, uh, there happened to be in this one place, one location during the Ann Arbor Arts and Crafts Show that usually goes on every year that really takes over the whole town. These Christians from a church in the area would come down and they'd put a soapbox and they'd take turns standing on it, and with a megaphone they'd be talking. So I'd go over to where they were talking, and I'd see the people that were standing around talking, and I'd say things uh, that I'd start talking with the people. And if the guy with the megaphone said something that was negative, like that you're all going to hell if you continue to live by these, but live by sin and all that. That's the kind of things that the person was saying. He'd be reading scriptures but that were saying that you're condemned because the way those scriptures were written, and not that that wasn't appropriate for that time to put in very strong ways, strong terms. To have a real fear of the Lord, because if you don't, then you'll eventually be consumed by the lower forces and you'll become waste. So there's a value to some of that, a lot of that. But it's not the kind of fear that we associate with the way that humans bring fear on people. And anyway, so I'd be talking to them, and at one point, the person was, I talked to him about, uh, I don't know why I brought this up, but I read to him Revelation 6:2, that that individual that is riding a white horse. That's the way it's written in many translations, even though the word for white is Luke, which has to do with light. That's why there's the definition of a certain strength of light that's, I think, in Lucans, something like that. Lucid, I think, comes from that as well. And anyway, so it's the light of the mind. That was why it was made. His whole body was filled with light. That's what that was saying about that horse. And yeah, it may have had an association with the fact that he ended up taking a Caucasian vehicle that is thought of as having, pale skin. But that's been abused and and used and abused by the lower forces in the human kingdom, just like you know other colorations of skin have been used and abused in the human kingdom by the lower forces because they want to keep humans against each other. They want to keep humans in competition with each other. They want to keep humans judging each other by what we look like instead of like what Martin Luther King said, by the character of our soul. Character being our behaviors and ways, our thinking. I think Martin Luther King might have been a next level task that was being done by an upcoming student. Anyway, um, not that he didn't have sins and stuff, because it's not about that necessarily. It's about taking a vehicle that can do the task that the next level has them do. And
Wow, people are really quiet tonight, huh?
yeah, yeah, there's not many in the chat either. I think my title probably has some effect on that. But that's okay. I'm not looking to have lots of people like this four watching right now. But
I
it
guess
is
it's Friday
noticeable. It
and
is
everybody's.
interesting sometimes certain titles
I was
bring more
saying
interest. Huh? Oh, yes. Thanks. Um, so he said to the, I get excited. I start to talk louder and louder. So I've asked Kathy to help me know when I'm getting carried away with my voice volume.
Oh, you did ask me?
Yes,
I thought I'd just tell you because it hurts my ears.
you do. And you have done that. But I also, after you've done that, I've said to you that I wanted you to do that. Maybe you don't remember that.
I
The
guess I
influence
don't.
is having
That
you
always
not
feels bad.
remember that.
I always feel bad.
Because you're not doing a negative by doing that to me. Because you have an issue with the ears. It's not negative. Well, I got lessons in talking too loud directly from Tiendo, actually. When there was a wall between where I was working in the juice lab and they were sleeping on the other side of the wall in that same house in San Antonio, Bandera.
Bandera.
Yeah, and
Ben.
and it just so happened that the room I was in was a like a solarium and had an indoor pool in it. That was pretty sizable. It wasn't like Olympic or anything like that, but it was you could definitely run laps in it. Swimming we didn't do. We had a procedure to go in up to our necks wearing a, a jumpsuit that covered our the button at the top button and covered our arms mostly three quarters and our legs entirely. Mm. And we would just have those were our old uniforms that we had when we graduated to another uniform that was a jumpsuit uh, and was more comfortable actually than that one. But that one was good when we were living outdoors because it was kind of rugged. It was like wearing jeans. It was like made out of a jean material, but it wasn't blue and had all these pockets. We didn't need that many pockets when we're, even though we had a pouch in our other jumpsuit, so we could keep our little 3x5 notebook and a pen if we wanted to take notes on something or remind ourselves of something that Tiendo was saying to keep on our mind as part of our lessons. I didn't do much writing in that, but I did some writing in it. Um, so the next verse in that Revelation 6:16 says that these individuals that are going to hide in the mountains and the dens, which I think the government is very behind, and private industry is very behind doing in all different places that I have no idea where. But they say that the tunneling system that Elon Musk was talking about having uh, has been a reality for a while. And, well, probably like 30 years or more. Um, at least from the 90s, uh, I saw reports that they had a tunneling system going up to New England. It was only one of the only ones that went into the east part of the Mississippi River division. But there were a whole bunch in the west, going to California, New Mexico, Arizona, uh, um, Nevada, Colorado. There were all kinds of tunnels going between. I don't know if they were just between military bases or what, and there were underground bases like in Cheyenne Mountain. Probably one of those tunnels goes to Cheyenne Mountain where NORAD is located. And so I don't think any of that's far fetched to think about relating to this prophecy game in Revelation 6:15, the dens in the rocks. 'Cause, anyway, and there's other evidence of that throughout prophecy. So anyway, so Revelation 6:16 then says, and those individuals are saying to the mountains and rocks, which is strange, or just their attitude maybe, because it does have to do with the word lego in the Greek, which is used for call sometimes. So maybe that's a better word for that because I don't think they're actually talking to the mountains and the rocks. That doesn't make sense to me. And they're not teaching. That's another word used for that, lego. They're not teaching the mountains and the rocks. Uh, um, to advise, to command, to direct. Well, they're directing the mountains and the rocks by forming underground cities. You could look at it that way. Uh, to point out with words or to intend, to mean, to say, to call by name, to call name, to speak out, speak of, mention. Okay, so I'm going to go with, at this point, to advise, to command, to direct, affirm over, those kind of thoughts. Uh, so they're affirming or they're directing the mountains and the rocks. And it says here to fall on us, which was always weird for me to think about. Fall on us. It's the Greek word pipto, Pipto, and it says that it's a reduplicated and contracted form of peto, which I think means rock, like Peter. Peter's the rock, which occurs only as an alternate in certain tenses, probably akin to 4072 through the idea of alighting. No, alighting. Alighting, alighting, which I'm not sure what that means, but I'm going to go down to their definitions. Because it's used as fall 69 times, fall down uh, 19 times, light one time, and fail one time. The light on us is interesting. Anyway, so it's to to describe from a higher place to a lower. Okay. Are they actually like praying to the god of the earth to to fall on them because of why? Well, if we look at why, that would give us a lot of context to maybe the best interpretation of this. Uh, Before I go any further with the different ways that it was used, because it says fall on us and hide us, which is conceal us, escape from, metaphorically to conceal, that it may not become known. That it may not become known. To conceal that it may not be known. That's very interesting because they're saying, hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Okay, so they want to be concealed from his face, the face of the one sitting on the throne, which is Do. Do is the face of to us of the one T birth to the throne task, like I was talking about in the last stream, uh, to finish the task. And T was said in Revelation 12, where it talks about her birthing the son to the throne. Um, she left because the earth swallowed her up. In other words, her vehicle left by her ashes being scattered to the water of White Rock Lake in Dallas, Texas. That was her departure from the task. And it continues to talk about, after she's gone, that the remainder of her seed are doing their job. And, oh, I just remembered this. I want to go to it. It says that the earth helped the woman, in other words, helped the vehicle that the older member T had, um, and by opening up her mouth, which is an expression you can see in the Old Testament, and swallowed up the flood. The flood was talked about as uh, uh, the mind from Lucifer, the serpent, the face of the serpent, or any of the individuals that are acting on behalf of the serpent, whether they know it or not. And because the serpent was trying to carry her away by the flood. In other words, flood her with negativity. And Doe said she left. He wasn't talking about this verse. He never didn't refer to it that I ever heard. Uh, Although he said Revelation 12:1 was talking about T as the woman, and that the dragon was Lucifer in that same chapter. So you get a pretty good idea that that chapter's got some value to it above the other chapters, like or equal with the other, like chapter 11 with the two witnesses being depicted. Anyway, uh, so the idea of Doe said that she left because of all the negativity that she had to sustain, deal with, all the negative thoughts that would come to her all the time because uh, that was coming from the families of those who joined them big time. In fact, one of the tasks that we did was to relieve their anxiety of the families by going and having a visit with them. It was both for them and for the students that were suffering with the anxiety of those that were their loved ones in the world. because they didn't leave everything behind without some anxiety, except I didn't have that much because I didn't have any strong bonds that I knew about. I guess, uh, um, I don't know. I guess it just wasn't something that was difficult for me. I didn't have any children. I didn't have a spouse that I was attached to. So it wasn't that difficult for me. But uh, for others it was. And T had to get the brunt of that, even from Doe, because there were things that Doe didn't have the equivalent standards in his behaviors and ways as T had. She could see through, T could see through um, making certain choices, knowing that they weren't going to amount to something that they wanted to happen. That would be something that would be part of their task to happen. But Doe wanted to go for those things a lot of times, and T would let him do it. And she would go with him, whatever, to investigate something. Uh, and then Doe would learn from that when it didn't work out that T knew better. That happened repeatedly to Doe until one time T got sat down on the curb of the street and said that I'm not taking another step from here. Um, and Doe recognized at that point that what he had been putting T through in that regard, and that was one part of his awakening to identify who his older member was, and that T was his older member, because his body, his vehicle, and the mind of the vehicle, and the inability of the vehicle to um, uh, take in his next level mind, uh, um, it took effort, experience, and his desire to change to bring that mind in. And then once it came in, he knew that T was his heavenly father, his older member, the chief administrator of this planet and the life forms on it. And so it's all a process. Anyway, so so they knew ahead of time. I mean, the prophecies knew ahead of time that uh, now you could actually take these same prophecies and you could probably speed them up a whole lot, so that they could have graduated soon after they came public, instead of being 22 years later for a number of them, most of them. Uh, so um, anyway, because the next level is always trying to do tasks as quickly as possible, so they expect the most. They don't reduce their expectations, even though Doe felt like he did that. He sometimes um, I don't know what the exact words to use for it, but he was less strong about certain things maybe than T was. But when T would say something, he recognized that it was the right place to be. It was the right thing to do, even though sometimes he had to overcome something in order to know it. He had to get rid of some of what his vehicle thought he knew, because he had a vehicle that had a pretty big ego. It's pretty had a lot of self confidence in the music department and the choral department. the singing department, and maybe some other departments of life. So, and you can see Doe talking about this throughout the audio tapes. It's not a lot, but every once in a while he says something about it that cues you into how much he was learning from his older member and how he went through it. So he knew what negativity was to deal with. And he said in this tape that we're talking about right now, 280, that that all the negativity that students were experiencing, they had experienced. He had experienced and T had experienced in the past. And I don't think he was referring to just during this current uh, interface with a human vehicle. That in the spiritual terminology is called incarnation in the flesh, is what that means. Carne comes from the Latin for flesh. But water birth, in order to be born of spirit, as Jesus talked about, and has been mistranslated. Anyway, so so what I was going to get at with that was that after the woman is gone in Revelation 12:16, then it says Revelation 12:17, and the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. The remnant is also remaining. And don't and Jesus talks about the remaining being including people that uh, are tricked by the lower forces to not recognize Jesus, not to recognize his return, and everybody, including all the members of the class that were being challenged on recognition of who their older member actually is. And Doe talks about this in his tape as, he was just about in tears talking about that if we really knew who we were um, working for, trying to become like, or trying to grow towards, a lot of our, difficulties would fluff away. But it's part of the process to have this as a difficulty, as a challenge, and how to apply it and when to apply it, and all that. So that to get down on ourselves if we don't think we're growing fast enough. Doe was even talking about in this tape 280 that we can think by his talking in the way he was talking in this tape, which sounds like he's fussing at us, that we can let the influences have us think that we're bad. And he went through each of the members that were in that group, and it was not everybody, but he was going to talk to Northcraft about it as well. I was in the Southcraft at that time, so I was at this meeting, 280, um, and he said, he got very intimate with his vocabulary and said that each individual he went to and said, "Do you know that I love you?" Maybe he didn't use those exact words with every individual, but and the individuals responded the way they felt to respond, and I don't think any of them, including myself, didn't respond with the recognition of knowing that because we could feel it. I could feel it. I did. I felt it many times, actually. Even when he was fussing at us, seeming to fuss at us, he was actually trying to give us tools of. I just got disconnected.
I was gonna say, are you ready to?
Yeah, but I want to finish this verse. So the war with the remnant of the seed is that's the Armageddon war, the real interpretation of it. It's a war for souls. And the lower forces, space alien souls, are trying to gather their own harvest of souls into their ranks because they can't create souls and they can't destroy souls. So they're trying to do everything in their power to keep people from seeing the truth. And that's why Tiendo looked like to much of the world that they were an evil cult when they were nothing of the sort. But they were overcoming the human condition. But that's not evil to do that. It's designed to be able to do that, just like it's designed that the animal minds can grow to someday incarnate into human vehicles in some way, in a way that I don't necessarily understand. They gave us a few clues on that, but I don't think I can do them justice, so I'm not going to go there right now. I am getting tired. And I think I've covered the things that I wanted to cover. Let me see for a second here. Go back to 6 for a second. Right, I do want to go to the last verse in Revelation 6:17. So the people hiding in the rocks and the dens are hiding from the face of him that sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, meaning what Jesus talked about as, the end of the world scenario and the recycling scenario that he talked about. Anyway, so, and the wrath only has to do with um, the way that the next level is angry with the lower forces. They're not necessarily angry in the same way with those that entertain the lower forces, because everybody is judged by what they've been up against and what they've done with what they've been given. Okay, so, but it is the judgment. And so it goes on to say that in 6:17, Revelation says, "For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand?" So this shows that even after all this is happening, or during this is all happening, who's going to stand through it? And stand means histemi, histemi. Stand is used, set, establish, stand still, be still and know that I am Lord. That's really a scripture. It was used 17 times miscellaneously for a miscellaneous definition. So it says to cause, make to stand, to place, to set, to bid. Let's see where the metaphorical ones are. Oh my gosh, there's too much here to read. Uh, here's one. Continue safe and sound. Who's going to be able to stand? In other words, who's going to be able to continue to live, to be prepared, to be steadfast, uphold the teachings of the next level, the task for the next level of sharing those teachings with others. All right, that's enough on that. So I don't see anything else happening in the chat. So I guess I'm going to call it a night, folks. It's been good to have the opportunity to share some of these things. And thanks for Kathy to be here to help me. And behind our effort, help Doe, help T, in in an effort to bring their mind to you all to see more and more. You know, go find the tapes and listen to them. Tape 280. And I'm not, of course, I'm not commanding anybody. I'm just saying, Howard, to me, uh, you can't help but benefit from it, in my opinion. There's no negatives in it. Good night.